Anyhow, I'm a terrible host, but we'll get this figured out.
That's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so yeah, like I was saying, I wanted to do a little show called The Adam and Friends where I get with people and we talk about stuff, and it was never intended to be about the virus or anything like that. But here we are, we're in a situation where we have a global pandemic, and you, James, you are my sage, my expert. I
Could be
sound like
worse, I
I'm
guess.
I sound like I'm kissing your ass or something like
No,
that,
no,
but
man.
I don't know. Now it seems like at first you seem like a paranoid schizophrenic or something like that, but
Yeah,
now it's like, oh, this is the guy that has his ear to the ground. Like, you know,
I
maybe I
tried.
maybe I better follow James's lead on some stuff because I gotta stock up of food. I'm ready to be in quarantine, that kind of thing. And I know you're kind of the same.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
so I was trying to get from you like where you heard about all this initially that triggered you into getting prepared for this, where nobody else really was, nobody else was talking about it.
Well, so like I was saying, a lot of stuff comes out of China. We're so used to seeing outbreaks of certain things in China. The original SARS came from China. That kind of petered out, after about 8,000 cases. I follow this kind of crap all the time, but avian flu, you get occasional transmission from a bird to a human, and even a couple that hopped, human to human there. I'm always looking at that kind of stuff. I mean, and it's not xenophobic to say this, but there's just a lot of disease that comes out of that area. That's just
Right.
been the way it is. Um, and when I saw this one, I didn't really pay attention much to what they were saying because the Chinese government's pretty much an iron curtain, anyways, as far as information going through. But they called it a mysterious pneumonia. That's just kind of what they called it.
Yeah.
And I didn't really pay attention much to that. I mean, I read the articles, I read what was going on, but it's when I started seeing these crazy actions that the government was taking. I mean, you can't you can't pay so much attention to what people say as compared to what they do. And if they don't match up, if I'm saying it's not a big deal, but I'm expending all sorts of manpower and just having these crazy draconian measures put in place, that tells me that if they're that freaked out about it, then it needs to be something that I pay attention to.
Do you think everything that they did was a good thing to do? Is they're on
Honestly,
lockdown, like,
I think they would have done more. I think they would have done more had they known how bad it was going to be.
yeah,
In retrospect, now I would say that they probably feel like they handled that thing pretty damn well. But if you could trust the numbers coming out of China, with 80 some thousand cases in China, they pretty much got it down to zero at this point. They're importing more cases from other countries than they have developing inside their own country.
yeah.
However, all those draconian measures are still in place. There's still millions and millions of people on lockdown. They're not going anywhere. They go out for food once a week, that kind of thing. And it'll be like that for a little while. But it seems like if your country's willing to kind of follow the leadership and do something like that, that is a way to stop this.
Right.
And that's kind of been the example that everybody's looking to right now. Italy's looking to that. You see Italy kind of stepping in. They're coming in with more and more draconian measures to the point where it's basically going to be a Wuhan. There's no doubt about it.
There's like rumors and stuff that that's happening here. I
Well,
mean,
you have
slowly,
San
it seems
Francisco.
like things are trickling through. Like, close this down, close that down, and then pretty soon it'll be everything. Maybe on.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we are not a socialist dictatorship here, obviously. So you can't just tell everybody we're going to close everything down, we're going to shut everything down. You would have mass hysteria. Nobody
Oh
would listen.
yeah.
You gotta kind of spoon feed that to us, so we accept the current level, and then when you make the next step, and we're just going to kind of step into it. But the problem is we're doing it very very late in this that curve that everybody talks about. You want to do it before the parabolic growth kind of starts, because once that parabolic growth starts, even if you lock everybody down, it's going to continue. It's going to continue to a point where
Right.
it overwhelms or could overwhelm hospitals.
Yeah. What do you got? What do you got to say that wouldn't scare the shit out of people?
I mean, Well, if
Got to be
if you
some
don't
kind of
mind,
bright side to all this. I don't
well,
know.
I mean, okay. So the bright side is that in a first world country that has good health care like the United States, you should see a 98% or better survivability rate. You know what I mean? 2% or less should be the CFR after everything's said and done. That should be the good news.
So you're talking mostly about the pain and suffering we have to go through to make that happen.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be it's going to be something that the problem with the way that we look at it right now is we kind of see it like the war in Iraq. You know what I mean? For the people in Iraq, when we went in there, that was detrimental. It was in front of their face. It was something they had to live with and deal with every waking moment. And here we just kind of saw that as some far off war. And I think Americans in general still view this problem as some kind of far off threat that, they realize that it's real. They understand that it's spreading. But to them, when they look out their window or go to the grocery store, you start seeing it a little bit now with the panic buying, but realistically, you're not seeing sick people all over the place. You're not seeing hospitals being overwhelmed or anything. We don't see that yet. So it seems very far away to most people. And
Yeah.
that the problem with that is these kind of things happen like that. You go from not seeing, any real problem to complete decimation in just a matter of days. It's just a couple days. And when it hits you, it's such a it just changes your perspective so fast. It's kind of crazy.
It does seem like things are happening faster, decisions are being made faster.
And they need to be. They really need to be. Obviously, we're here in Ohio, and as far as states go, I think Ohio's kind of leading the charge in the United States, which I'm happy to see. A
Yeah.
lot of people are upset with these closings, but realistically, I mean, we're not in charge of the health of 11 million people. So I trust their decisions. I think they're making good decisions based on what I can see in other countries and how it's played out. I think they're making great decisions. I even wish they would be a little more harsh, a little faster,
Right.
because I see where these cases are going.
Well, like I went out to Dollar General and I was surprised by the amount of older people that are still milling around at the store and don't
Yep.
really seem affected by all this. And they're the most likely targets.
Unfortunately, I think this whole pandemic is as polarizing as politics right now. It's something I'm not going to worry about. I don't need to worry about it, or it's full blown panic. And really, there's very few people in between there. I am
Right.
imagining, and I've kind of been telling people this week. By the end of this week, I think most of those it doesn't really exist. It's just the flu people are going to start moving more towards the center by the end of this week. Really, the only thing that's stopping people from coming to that understanding is our complete lack of testing. You know, the hospitals will get overwhelmed whether we test or not, but to understand how big this is building currently, you can't do that. We're flying blind right now. We have no real data, no real numbers. We don't understand the true number of infected, and that's kind of scary, to be honest.
Yeah.
When you get to that point where it's so widespread in every community in the country, then every time you leave the house, a person that's fully aware of this has to basically assume it's in every place that you go. That's the only way
yeah.
to be sure.
I'm there.
It's painful. It's a painful existence to be outside in public space right now if you're fully aware that it basically can and probably is almost everywhere that you're going.
Right.
It's
I'm
it's
really
tough.
trying to heavily limit going out. I mean, I've only gone as far as my hometown to Dollar General and stuff like that. But even there, I'm like, if anybody sneezes or coughs or anything, I'm heading the other way, and I got rubber gloves on and
Right. Yep.
stuff
Same
like
here.
that. So,
A few weeks back, I went to go to Starbucks against my better judgment, by the way, but I love Starbucks. And the barista there, as soon as I ordered it, grabbed my cup from the top of the cup, and I immediately said no, thank you, and walked out. I couldn't allow myself to do that,
yeah,
And that
and
I
probably
guess
at the
that,
time that seemed like this guy is so
right,
paranoid. What's
right,
wrong with this
yeah.
guy?
Like, this guy's a jerk, man. What's he doing this for? But I just couldn't, in good conscience, buy that and drink that.
So I know you have a job where you're out in places where there's a lot of people, a lot of
Yes.
public people. How are you dealing with that?
Honestly, it is as obscene as it may sound to people. PPE. I'm wearing gloves, disinfectant. Honestly, in certain situations, I'll wear a face mask. It just depends on where I'm at, how high the likelihood of me encountering sick people or um, being in their presence. I mean, I hope we all know by this point that this is an airborne disease. You know, this does linger in the air. It's not the same thing as the flu where it's droplet transmission. This is aerosolized. So, you know, there's being in the same confined space with somebody breathing in that same air does run a risk.
Okay, do you feel like maybe anytime you talk to somebody about N95 masks, it's like, oh, you don't need those. Those only protect you from infecting other people. Is that a bit of misinformation, do you think?
It is, but the way if you listen to the way people word things, they especially health officials, they word them in a way that is ambiguous. So they'll say things like wearing a face mask doesn't prevent you from getting this virus, and we need to save all the N95s for our medical staff. So what they're trying to do is face masks or surgical masks are just a 3-ply ear loop face covering, and those do not filter out the virus particulates, if you will, compared to an N95, which does. So they try to use those terms interchangeably in the same sentence to kind of make the thing make sense. So wearing a face mask, which is just a surgical mask, does not filter out the air. That is absolutely true. But
Right.
what it does do is it is a constant reminder for me not to touch my face,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it does prevent droplet transmission. So if a sneeze comes in, something I would normally inhale through a mucous membrane, that it does stop that. Obviously, you still have your eyes, which is another mucous membrane where this can enter. That's just as easy. So if you don't have eye protection on, and I think that's kind of what they're getting at is most people don't know how to do a fit test on an N95, even if you have them. And if you don't fit test them and they're not fitted properly, they don't help that much, you know.
So, like, making sure the nose piece is pinched properly around the nose and the ears
Well,
are.
kinda. The way that they do a fit test is you grab the mask, you put the mask solid on your face, you make sure that it's conforming to all the skin around your area, below your chin, around the bridge of your nose, and then you put the straps on separately. The bottom one has to go below the skull, and the top or the top strap goes high on the head, and that's what holds it in that place where you're trying to fit it. And then to do a test, you exhale rapidly to try to make sure there's no air blowing out and all the air is coming in and going out of the filter itself instead of around the sides. And, you know, if worn properly, they're extremely effective. However, wearing an N95 alone is not going to stop you from getting the virus. As I said, you still have your eyes exposed, which are a mucous membrane, and just as easy to get the virus through your eyes as it is anything else. So if you're not wearing goggles, if you're wearing goggles, proper goggles, a properly fitted N95, you're not doing anything crazy with your hands, or you have nitrile gloves on, that is a pretty safe bet that you're not going to contract the virus at that time. However, if you don't know how to remove this gear properly, or you have contaminated your clothing and you don't take that off properly, then you could still contract the virus itself. So if basically it's a long painstaking process to wear PPE, but if you do it properly, then obviously you can pretty much be safe without too many problems. However, most people will not do that. I've seen it a million times where people will just grab the front of their N95 so they can breathe or drink something.
Yeah.
Anytime that you do stuff like that, you're just negating the whole purpose of having any of it.
That's like more education on an N95 mask than I've got off Reddit or whatever. That's been
Well, I mean,
that's been kind of my learning tool for all this stuff.
Right,
lately.
right.
It's just,
Reddit's a great source, man. But you got to take everything that you read on there with a grain of salt. As you can't necessarily verify the sources. The easiest thing for people to do before they go through the Reddit phase, where you're just constantly scrolling through 300 articles, is to start reading. They have some basic case studies and basic information on Johns Hopkins, the New England Journal of Medicine, and the Lancet out of the UK. Those are three of the most respected and well-known medical journals in the world, and those they only produce factual information.
Okay, well, I could get behind that, following real medical journals rather than just playing around on Reddit.
Right, right. Well, if you read those, you'll get a very good understanding of how this, the general specs about this thing. And then if you start seeing things to the contrary on Reddit, you can kind of discard some of the crap that you're seeing. But the r/coronavirus is doing the mods there are doing a pretty good job on filtering out the BS. Honestly.
Okay. Now, since we're on the topic of social media, what is it with all the people that are, well, I see these posts creep up every once in a while, and they're like, oh, this coronavirus, I actually had it back in November. It's been around since November. Nobody talked about it then.
Yeah. So what they were talking about is a rather nasty antibiotic resistant um, upper respiratory infection that went around late last year, like in between October and December, somewhere around in there. That is nowhere near what. Yeah, those people are in for a rude awakening if they ever do get COVID, because the symptoms between those two are just night and day. One is a cough, an annoying cough that's kind of semi-productive, and an upper respiratory infection that just lingers with you for about 3 or 4 weeks, and
Right.
that's still going around to an extent. But yeah, a lot of people had that late last year. This is something totally. The symptoms of this are totally different than that. Now, they call it a respiratory infection, but this is it's like a flu. You
Uh-huh.
have a low grade temperature. The flu from COVID will cause respiratory issues like ARDS or acute respiratory distress syndrome through viral pneumonia, but that's not the same thing as hacking up a productive cough and that just kind of lingers with you or whatever. This is more of a with COVID, it's more of a dry cough. It's not productive at all because there is no mucus that you're coughing up or excreting, and the reason that you're coughing is because your bronchial tubes are slowly filling with inflammatory liquid, and that's why you don't have a production when you cough during these things.
Well, that's
And
pleasant.
yeah, yeah, I've been told it's something like slowly suffocating, and that sounds terrifying to me. To be
Well,
honest,
I mean, you get cases on all ends of the spectrum, it seems like, because
you do.
they're talking about younger people just kind of like walk right through it and don't even notice it.
The very young seem to. Yeah, I mean they almost are. They almost call them asymptomatic carriers because most of them don't have any real serious symptoms. Most of them don't even get a fever until you get about right around the age of adolescence. That's when this thing starts taking on a standard kind of flu. So kids that are 5, 6, 7. I even seen one that was a newborn that was 3 months old that got over this thing without hardly any symptoms. That's not to say that it's exclusively like that, but the overwhelming majority is like that.
I think that's got to be encouraging for a lot of people.
It is, but it's so peculiar. It is such a strange feature of a novel virus. I gotta say,
Yeah,
it is very, very targeted
that's
and
probably
specific.
where the tinfoil hat comes in on.
It
Like, was this
is.
designed
It
in a
is.
lab by somebody?
I completely agree with you there. I don't like to subscribe to conspiracy theories that can't be backed up with any kind of real evidence. But the characteristics of this thing is very, very peculiar. I'll say that.
Yeah, I guess we'll probably never know that
Very
detail.
true. Very, very true.
But I guess, like, on some lighter stuff, did you buy a bidet yet?
No, my one of my buddies actually owns a company that sells, of all things, bidets are one of the things that they sell, and I've given thought to it, but I don't feel like running wiring through my bathroom right now. I don't want to like have to redo all the electrical outlets and all that garbage because it's not set up for that kind of thing.
Oh,
But right
you're
now, I
talking
can
about
see
to heat
the
water for it?
yes, yeah,
I did
yeah.
see some models where you would just tee off an existing hot water line, so you'd run hot and cold to it. But you'd
See,
have to
now
be in close
that
proximity to
probably
another
do
hot
that.
water line.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I
so that's
probably
a
would.
possibility. I think overall the idea is kind of cool, but you don't see too many Americans adopt this whole thing.
So, well, we could learn something from that. You don't see many Americans wearing face masks either, but it seems to work in the countries that do. And
Yeah.
I think it's funny because we have such a stigma about certain things. Like if you walked into a bathroom and they had a bidet, just like me, you would probably like, no, I'll see you later.
I don't know.
That's
I'm a pretty adventurous guy. I'd probably say,
I
I'll
get
try.
it.
I'll try that out.
All right.
I'm not
Yeah.
one of the people that are going to be like, oh, that's gay. I'm not going to do that.
See, to me though, it's like when I would see that in a restaurant or something, I would think of like Demolition Man with like the three seashells. Like I wouldn't know what to do. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
what's all these buttons do?
I've got that movie on some kind of streaming service. I might have to binge watch that again. It's been a while.
Yeah. Right now is a good time to do that. Honestly.
Yeah. So when are we gonna be on the day when we're having like VR cyber sex and all the restaurants are Taco Bell
Right. Yeah.
and we're almost there, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm okay with the no taco or with the Taco Bell thing, man. I never really liked Taco Bell, anyways, man. That's not. Yeah. If they won and that was all that was available, I think I would just eat in every day.
I don't know. I like some Taco Bell. I'm gonna
I
miss
can't
not
do it.
having Taco Bell for however long I decide to self quarantine.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So let me see what else I have on my checklist here. Tech. So you work in tech. What have you had to do to facilitate people working from home and stuff like that? Is that challenging?
Yep. That's not challenging at all. Well, with some of their processes, but you got certain companies that have some antiquated processes that could be easily fixed digitally. That just want to stick with the analog version, and that makes it a little bit of a challenge. But other than that, no, this isn't too bad. It's
I
what I was
liked
just doing when you called.
I liked on the press conference they talked about how the millennials will be the people to pick up all this stuff and run with it and basically
Absolutely. No, it's
be the
absolutely.
future in this situation.
And to be honest, I is the work style. I can totally understand. I get it. I don't like to be forced. I don't want to be forced to work from home. I don't think anybody wants to be forced to work from home.
Yeah,
I would like the option, but I don't want to be forced.
yeah, that's a whole different thing. So what are you doing to keep yourself occupied, entertained?
When I can, it's hard to get out of this. I don't know what you want to call it, a mental state where you feel like you need to be always aware of everything that's going on in regards to this whole situation. It's hard to let go of that at times because it's so serious and it's changing so fast.
Right.
It's easy to feel like we might miss something very important if we kind of lower our guard for a little bit.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing is I kind of start myself off with some sort of comedy movie, and I'll watch that, and that usually puts me down low enough that I can start to do other productive work in the house, and most of that's like writing software. And I'll come in here and I'll sit down and start cracking on some stuff that I should have been, done with a while back, but that's how it goes. But
Yeah, it's like
I need something to lower my guard.
late last week, I like the depression hit for real on this stuff, and like the first thing I jumped on Netflix was like I watched Step Brothers.
Yeah, that's a great
Most of Step
best
Brothers.
movie ever, man.
And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna watch any Walking Dead or anything like that. I'm gonna
Right,
watch something like this. And like I'm gonna be real with you. There has been times we got into a cleaning binge. We cleaned the whole house. Like there's been times when I was just like I was carpet cleaning the house and I have that moment of silence in my head while I'm carpet cleaning the house and I legit like almost burst into tears just thinking about this thing.
Yeah,
But then you just kind of like take a deep breath and move on, and you gotta do what you gotta do.
well, when people, when you got, people out fighting for our country and things like that, it's not, obviously what we're going through is not nearly as extreme, but it's the same basic premise. When you feel that there is a life and death situation that's pending over you every second, and you don't get a single break from that for days, weeks, or even months, it has a breaking effect on people's minds. And that is something that's serious. And it's so easy for people to get into that where, you diminish everything. You diminish your relationships with your family, your work, anything else that you do. And it's a real balancing act to pay enough attention to feel like, I'm able to make the correct decisions or do or not do the things that I shouldn't be doing, and still have a meaningful life in the middle of all this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of the hard thing. How do we have, excitement and purpose and be happy and all these things while we're basically contained inside of our house? But
I mean, that's a good thing about having the internet nowadays.
it is. The communication's there, but the human interaction isn't there, and that's kind of the thing that I came to the conclusion. I am not quarantined to my house per se. I am quarantining myself from other people's physical presence. So, we were just talking about, places we can go, hiking, being out in the woods, kind of just not feeling so claustrophobic all the time. And I think things like that are extremely helpful when, having prolonged stays in your house.
Yeah, I saw some information circulating, like things you can do outside, and I'm definitely on board with taking a walk,
Yep,
getting some fresh air. That's good for the immune system and everything too.
absolutely.
So,
Get a
so
little
I'm completely
exercise.
on board with that. So, like, since it is kind of closing in a little bit, have you heard any firsthand stories of anybody in Ohio or the United States, anywhere that's got this that you know of? I mean, obviously there's.
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, so my sister, her neighbor is quarantined by the CDC, and they had to talk with her about the last time that she had contact with her. Thankfully, she wasn't in that time frame, so that's great. But obviously, she's freaking out. When you got your neighbor being quarantined for the stuff, and then my girlfriend's employer has people that are actively being quarantined right now. So yeah, but that's the thing. For most people, that's what it takes to become real, is you either see it or you hear about it firsthand from somebody. It doesn't take that for me. This has been very real for me for a long time. So that's just kind of, I don't know, just acknowledging that when I hear that kind of stuff, I just take that as acknowledgement that, yeah, okay, you're looking at it the right way.
Yeah, because, well, like, it's pretty close, Cuyahoga
Well,
County.
if you trust the Ohio, the people in charge of the Ohio Health Department, then they're saying there's upwards of 100,000 cases running around Ohio right now, and this is like it's like the eye of the storm, man. So because this has such a long incubation time, you can have all these mass infections starting to balloon without ever seeing the repercussions of it, because but from the point you get infected, it could be up to 2 weeks before you start showing any real symptoms. And even after you show symptoms, it typically isn't until the second week of showing symptoms that you need to be hospitalized. So, you got a month and a week there. You got 5 weeks where, or I'm sorry, 4 weeks where you could have been infected. You can start showing symptoms, but you're not going to see the overwhelming burden on the hospitals yet. So that month where all these people are becoming infected, and that's where I believe we are right now. We're in that just eye of the storm that's about to change, and I think it's hard to really guesstimate when all that stuff goes down exactly. But I pretty much come to the conclusion that this is going to be the last week that people can kind of hold out on that. This is just the flu. I ain't worried about it kind of stuff. After this
Yeah.
week, I think it's going to be very pronounced around everywhere, honestly.
So, let's see, what kind of positives can we glean from this? I guess, you can look at China, how they seem to be out of the worst of it.
I'm not trying to be doom and gloom or
Yeah.
anything, but I don't think they are. honestly. I think you're not really out of this thing until you have, and I'm not agreeing with the UK, or I think that's a horrible idea, but until you have herd
When you
immunity.
said UK, you're talking about the herd immunization, or what's that
Yeah,
called?
yeah, that,
Where basically they
what's that?
just expose a bunch of people to it in
They
hopes
expose
that
the healthiest. They expose the healthiest people to it that should be able to get over it. Allow them to develop immunization, and then you kind of go on about your business. And those people that are scattered out through your entire population will prevent the thing to just kind of wash over your whole country. It has stopping points. That is a horrible idea, honestly. That's it's just a god awful idea. It's almost an inhuman idea. Um, but herd immunity eventually through natural, naturally acquiring your herd immunity is how you get over something like this completely. And that is if it doesn't mutate or, so on and so forth. But
and that
China
point
does
is
not
what they're
have,
talking about being months out.
right. China does not have herd immunity. They, according to them, they only have 80 some thousand cases in a country
Out
that
of
holds
what,
a third of the
three
population.
point something billion?
Right. So that is not sufficient herd immunity. And as soon as they ease up on those draconian measures that they have put in place right now, they're just reinviting reinfection. So they need to keep themselves locked down long enough for everybody else to get locked down at the same time, and then everybody can ease up. But unfortunately, it only takes one rogue country not to really control this very well, and you can start reinfecting the rest of the world. Now, here's the good part. Here's the good thing. I'm hoping, just like everybody else, that this is seasonal. In other words, it doesn't propagate nearly as much in hot months. It kind of appears that way if you look at Johns Hopkins map. The majority of the infections are happening in our hemisphere where we're all experiencing colder weather right now. So I'm hoping that that's the case, and that's kind of what I'm gunning for. Everything that I'm thinking is kind of with that plan. It's always been, for the past few months, have enough stuff if I need to kind of camp out in the house until, mid-spring, early summer, that I could do that. And that's kind of where my whole game plan has always been.
So, do you think food, internet, stuff like that keeps up? Electricity, running water?
It has to. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that'll ever be a problem. We don't really have a choice, to be honest.
Yeah.
The power has to stay on, the water has to stay on, and the food has to be still being supplied. So, yeah, China didn't have a problem with that. I can't see that we would either.
Well, that's encouraging. See,
Yeah, that's
you're all
good.
full of bright spots.
Right? Yeah, yeah. There's
Okay,
there's
so
some good news
what
in it.
else might you have as far as like keeping your mind occupied, keep it sane while you're going through this?
Honestly, I've started doing some other things that I normally haven't done. It's so easy to take, I guess, overly look over the small things. You know what I mean? But when I'm sitting here and I don't have all this stuff going on in my life where I feel like I got to go run out to here and go do this and go see this person do all that, it's allowing me to kind of appreciate some of the small things. Like I play Scrabble every night with the family.
Oh
That's
yeah,
fun.
my wife and I have been doing words with friends for a bit,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yep, yep.
that kind of thing.
Yep, absolutely. And I honestly enjoy the hell out of that.
Yep. I got a Plex server, so in case Netflix, has trouble.
Right, right.
I know Xbox Live had some trouble.
Did they?
Yeah, they had a short period when they were down. They had some issues.
I can't
And
see.
YouTube, okay, I thought this was interesting. YouTube even had a thing about um, they're not going to have as many people to check people's videos. So they're going through the automated screening processes. So you have a longer period. Say if their auto processes mark your video as being bad, then to dispute that you have to go through a longer process because there's less people checking the stuff. So those people might be filtered a lot more.
I can see some internet congestion issues for sure, or ISP issues. To be honest, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure that I'm not getting my full bandwidth right now, on peak hours and anyways, so yeah, you do something like a total lockdown of everybody in this area, then we're going to be back to, kind of waiting for
It'll
the
be
page to load.
almost
kinda
like
stuff.
dial-up speed or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Ugh. Oh well. Well, I guess that's kind of all the questions I have for you for now.
All right. Well, hopefully I
I'm sure.
answered.
I'm sure there'll be more things to come with all this. I know we're all patiently waiting, looking at the news and stuff like that. My only advice to people is, try to keep a good outlook and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. That's take everything that you're reading and seeing with a grain of salt, but at the same time, don't ignore the important stuff like hygiene and even small amounts of PPE. I'm a big fan of the gloves. I love the idea of nitrile gloves as opposed to constantly washing or sanitizing my hands every time
Right.
I touch one thing.
I do the
It's
gloves,
just getting
and
absurd.
then I still wash and sanitize my hands
Right,
when I
well,
go
yeah,
to.
exactly. But you only do it once. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
you're without gloves, it's like, oh, I touched that. I don't want to touch anything else. I need to wash that. So that's I'm a big fan of the gloves. And to be honest, the hand sanitizers of the world are running a little short at the moment. So I think gloves are a little bit easier and they're pretty cheap.
Yep.
But
All
thanks
right.
for having me on, Adam. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. I appreciate talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Anytime.
You're a smart dude, and I always look forward to talking to you.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yep. So, I guess with that, I'll let you get on with your night, and
All right, man. You have a good one. See you later.
see ya.